Hey everyone, this is Dorrani from VG247, and today I'm joined by Sherif. Sherif, how are you?
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm very, very good. You've got a game here that we've both played, but you want to speak about it. This game is called Space Punks.
Yes, Space Bunks. It's the new game, kind of an unexpected game from Flying Wild Hog, which is
Yeah,
the Polish studio. What does some kind of classic leaning shooters. They started out like a decade ago
yeah,
with Hard Reset, which is not a game a lot of people remember, but it was like a classic kind of 90s shooter in a modern setting.
yeah.
And then from there, they went on to do Shadow Warriors 1, Shadow Warriors 2. And
Yeah.
obviously, right now, they're working on Shadow Warriors 3. And it seems to me like at some point between Shadow Warriors 2 and 3, they unlocked like a cheat code or something that the studio just expanded. And now they have Shadow Warriors
Resources.
3. Yeah, it's like someone is like turned a corner and is like, what? All of these untapped power, all this untapped power. So now they have like a bunch of games in development. They have Shadow Warriors 3, which looks incredible. They have a game with Focus, which is Evil West.
Hmm.
They have even like a side-scrolling, moody game called Trick to Yome. And then they have this, which just came out of nowhere.
All the games
Uh,
come in, all
oh,
of them,
yeah, all of a sudden, I'm
every
all for
style.
it. I'm all for it. I love the gameplay and the game feel of those games. So yeah, Space Punks is basically their new game. They're doing it with Jazzix, who are the RuneScape people.
Yeah,
It's a top-down action shooter that's sort of Diablo, sort of Helldivers, but not really any of the two. It's sort of like a more actiony
yeah.
focused top-down shooter. You could think of it as like a top-down Borderlands, but it doesn't really reach those heights.
We'll speak about that later in the
But
discussion.
yeah, it came out of nowhere. It's a neat game, like a sci-fi setting.
Yeah,
You have four heroes that are essentially classes,
yeah.
unique abilities that you get to start with one of the four, and then you unlock them uh, with an in-game currency that you earn. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's a very I don't want to call it basic to disparage it, but like it's a very simple setup. You
Yeah.
load into a hub world, you pick your character, you load into a mission, you finish the mission, you get some loot, you earn some XP, you unlock new abilities, you do the same thing again and repeat.
Yeah.
But it's fun. What do you think of what you played of it?
Yeah, so I haven't played as much as you. So I played about an hour, and an hour you get to do quite a few different things. As you said, it's quite the loop of starting a new game is here's how to play the game. Go and do this mission, come back, here's how to get the loot, here's how to change your loot, here's how to change your gear, go back out, here's an ability. And it seems cool. I say I was playing solo, so I didn't get that sort of team feel. So I didn't know what the other characters done. I played a character called Duke, who is, I'm assuming, is the main gunslinger of the group, who's got like a throwable missile or grenade. And it seems pretty cool. I'm not sure if it's my style of game. I love ARPGs. I love Diablo. So, but something about this is a bit missing. But I don't want to be too harsh on it because I know it is very early, and a lot of the things are work in progress. So I'm not going to be too reductive of their efforts at the moment. But I enjoyed
No,
what I played.
it is definitely missing a bunch of stuff. Like you are
Yeah,
absolutely right about that. And I think anybody who's watching our footage or when they get to play it next week, a few things in the game will say, "Oh, work in progress." You
yeah.
can even highlight them.
So
Uh,
so this is one thing you said that it's like this game just come out of nowhere, right?
yeah,
And then it's out next week. Usually this is my favorite thing in games when a development studio says, "Here's this new game," and it's actually out and you can play it next week. That,
yeah.
that is my favorite
I
thing
love
in
that.
games.
I love that. Yeah.
My least favorite thing is seeing a trailer and then seeing 5 years like later as the release date. It's like, oh, okay, I'm hyped, but okay, let's just forget this now because it's just not coming anytime soon. So I think that's great. I think this game is going to be great for people that want to just chill with their friends, don't want to take things too seriously. Maybe you're done grinding out Diablo. Maybe you don't want to play Destiny because it's a bit too grindy. Maybe you don't want to play the Division because you just want to chill and have a different looting experience. This game would be perfect for those. You don't want to take things too seriously. But I did enjoy it. It's coming out next week. Do you know what day next week? What's the actual?
Yeah, July 14th. So what's going to be out next week is essentially the early access period of that game.
Okay.
So Spacepunks is going to be free to play,
Mhm.
but as if you're familiar with like service type games, MMO type games that are eventually going to be free to play, when they launch, it's usually a buy-in.
Yeah.
They have founder specs that you can buy, which get you in now.
Yeah.
Uh, you get to play early. You get a bunch of cool shit with your buy-in.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is that you're starting out kind of on the ground floor, and there's not a lot of content. The game, like what's there, is polished, but it's not up to the level of usually what you get or what I expect from Flying Wild Hog.
Yeah.
There's just you get to help build that game and offer feedback to the devs. It's I think what's there today is compelling
Yeah.
as far as the action, the loop of like the shooting, the melee combat, the different abilities are meaningful enough that you can play with every character for like 6 or 7 hours, which
Yeah.
if you add that up, like that's usually like the time you spend in like most games. I will say though, the game is expecting you to grind and replay old missions a lot. Like
Yeah.
it's not like a type thing where it's like, oh, I'm gonna play this campaign and maybe I'll do like a couple of side missions here. No, the
Yeah.
campaign is kind of, I want to say 25% of the way there. Like you'll see a hint of a story, and then the rest is gonna presumably arrive over the course of early access.
Yeah.
There's no like story cutscene where you're like, oh, I know who these people is. Like there's a conflict. Is like the outline of something, and
Mhm.
you're like, oh yeah, I see what's happening. But then you're thrown in, and you have a couple of missions, and then stops, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
what do I do now? It's like, well, you got to keep
Grind.
playing those missions
You gotta
because
grind, buddy.
the next destination, which is another planet, is kind of locked behind your power level. So imagine playing like Destiny,
Yeah.
which Destiny every year has its soft cap and hard cap, and then you don't get to play the raid until you have uh, reached, I don't know, like power 500, whatever it is Destiny's
Yeah.
at these days. But imagine if it wasn't just the raid. Imagine if it was just, you're not going to go to Venus until you
You're
reach
just not
this power
allowed.
level. You're just not allowed. Like your star map is just going to have a padlock on it, and it's going to say, "Reach
Go
this."
back and grind.
Yes, go back and grind. So that's disappointing, but it's almost there by necessity because there's just not a lot of the game there. So if you have normal progression and give people like, yeah, blasting through it, like let's go, people will finish this in like 10 hours.
Yeah.
And this is like a live service game. It's an online game. It's meant to be grinded out and played along with friends.
Yeah.
So I know this is going to disappoint some people, but it is what's there at launch. When the open beta, excuse me, they're saying it's sometime this winter. When that arrives, it will be free to play, and I imagine there will be a lot more content, and
Yeah.
many of those systems will be more fleshed out.
Yeah. It's
But yeah,
definitely work in progress. Go on, sorry.
what do you think of that sort of progression stuff? The curve.
Ooh, so the progression is weird. It's just a bit odd. I think I wasn't a big fan of like the loot boxes being in my face instantly.
Hmm.
And like as you level up, like the presentation of you gaining a new ability or your sort of, what would you call that? It's like like your main progression. Is that what you'd call it?
Yeah,
Like your
definitely. You're
yeah,
unlocking.
yeah,
It's a linear progression. You
yeah,
just have like I think like 10 levels. On level
yeah,
3, you unlock a grenade or like your first ability, and then on level
yeah,
5 or whatever, it's linear
yeah.
progression.
I think it's just everything is been presented in that sort of loot box fashion, which always it never rubs me well. But it is just like here's a new weapon, here's a new mod for your like if you want like 1% crit boost increase, like it's loads of like incremental um
Upgrades.
advanced upgrades, and it's it just feels fine. It feels
Yeah,
fine. I said
it feels
presentation's
fun
weird, but
for
it
sure.
feels like any other game with like in terms of progression, like this sort of loot based games. Of course, you're going to be going up in percentages to get stronger, but it feels cool. It feels cool.
We should say that the loot boxes stuff, that's just, you get those for playing. You can't spend money on loot boxes.
Hmm.
The only thing that you can spend money on is just cosmetic upgrades. You get a cape,
Yeah,
you get like it's a black and gold skin instead of the normal default colors that they start with.
yeah.
But and I've confirmed this with the team. There is no paid loot boxes. They just
Okay, that's good.
presented like loot boxes show up in the game, and I can see why you're immediately taken aback by it
So,
because you know that's how we are these days. Like loot boxes, it's just not an interesting system. It's just not a good system.
yeah,
And I could completely see someone like looking at this and thinking, "Oh,
yeah.
hang
That
on."
was me.
But it's not. They're presented in that way, but it's really more like a here's your reward. It just comes out of a box, which is
Yeah, which
like
I don't know.
maybe don't. Well, it's an animation, a box animation that opens, but this
Yeah,
is like their way of saying, whereas Destiny would have like a purple or like a yellow, uh,
engram.
yeah, engram or
Yeah,
box.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
imagine this being that, which is that's how they're presented, but it's not.
yeah,
It's not the terrible system that you have in some other free to play games.
yeah,
From what I've seen, like it's actually like fairly well balanced in favor of someone who's not going to pay any money, which is crucial, but also interesting because right now you can only play it by buying into it. But it's
mhm,
good to see that they're kind of laying the groundwork now for when it goes free to play later this winter,
yeah,
that you won't struggle. Like I was earning the currency, it's called shards, which let you unlock the other characters. I was earning that at a pretty, at a pretty satisfying clip.
yeah,
And the rest of the unlocks that you get are just, your abilities and your passive skills in a skill tree. Those were a little slow, but that to me is a sign that you just don't want people to just blitz through this
yeah,
skeleton.
yeah. I think free to play games can do very very well. They can do very very well. I think as soon as you hear free to play loot boxes, everyone's like, nope, absolutely not. But they can do incredibly well. Look at Genshin Impact. I would say maybe not the
Yeah.
best example, but Genshin Impact, uh, League of Legends, Valorant, all of these free to play games that do well because they try to keep it competitive and keep the playing field very fair. And most of the things are cosmetic. And if Space Punks can do that as well, then they'll be fine. Whoever will play it will. People are going to enjoy the game. People are going to enjoy this game definitely.
Yeah, it's designed for co-op. You can completely play it solo. You and I played it solo because when we had access to it, just
Yeah,
not a lot of people had access. So you would run into a person who's like a dev name,
yeah. Do you
and
know,
then
I want to just quickly say, sorry to cut you, but
no, no,
like I was playing a mission, and I was like, this was not designed for one person. This was designed for. I think it was like I was collecting batteries from an area,
yeah,
and I was like, there's supposed to be more people here, isn't there? Because it took me ages to like run it from wherever this item was located, run it and deposit the battery into whatever it needed to be deposited into, then run back and then do it again. And I thought to myself, if I had 4 people, one of us is supposed to be carrying the battery. It's supposed to be like 2 teams of 2. One of us carries the battery, one of us clears the area. And do that in one go and then come back. What would have taken 4 people 2 seconds took me 5 minutes.
that's definitely that's definitely It's like I said, it can be played. You can play it
Yeah,
solo. And you know what I did when these missions, the battery
go on.
delivery missions show up? I would just clear the way first. I would just
Yeah,
clear all the entire way up to the destination out of
yeah,
enemies and then run back, pick up the battery, and then run to the
yeah.
destination. That's the only way to do it because if you try to shoot as you're carrying the battery, there's just not enough time. It
Yep.
would just run out, and you'd have to go grab another one. So I learned to just carve my own path.
Yeah.
So yeah, once you finish these missions, you get loot. There is unfortunately uh, 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 kind of an issue here, which is that you cannot equip loot in the field.
Yeah.
You get an unlock that it says melee weapon or whatever, and then you're like, well, what kind of melee weapon?
Yeah.
Because no idea. You have to go back to the hub. You equip it, sort of like how Anthem was. I
Mhm.
know you. I don't. You don't
Woo!
want to bring up Anthem in any sort of conversation, but it is the closest point of comparison.
Yeah.
They eventually changed that in Anthem, but yeah, it is. That's kind of a problem. I like to get loot shit. The developers' justification for that was that they want you to be focused on the mission and then leave all the inventory management and the sort of crafting stuff to the hub
That's odd.
area, which is
Yeah.
that's their take on it. I actually didn't find it to be too disruptive because missions only take you like 12, 13 minutes to finish.
Yeah.
If you check off every corner, you may be spending like 15, 18 minutes in there. So you could just wait 15 minutes. Like I didn't find it to be, whereas in Anthem, it's an massive open world that you're just in for hours. It was a
Mhm.
little rough to have to go back to the hub. Here,
Yeah.
missions are like instances that are generated when you start.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's annoying, but eh, like it's 12 minutes. Like it's not a thing.
Yeah. 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 I think there is going to be some janky stuff going on, but I think once it sort of gets from its release into, well, the closed release into the open beta, that
Yeah.
period they're going to get a lot of feedback from a lot of people because people will support games like this. Any game with loot, I think, has this rallying of people that will give honest feedback, and that's the best feedback. Um, do you want to wrap it up by saying anything in particular? I just want to say that it will garner some a fan base. It's not definitely not for everyone, but I will be checking it out when it does release, and when it's in a bit more of a stable state. As I said, everything's work in progress. When it's in a bit more of a stable state, I will be giving it a go. I'll get my pals to just hop on and just have a good time when we're not stressing out on Valorant or Escape from Tarkov, or I'm when I'm not getting one tapped.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, definitely. It's definitely, yeah. It's a game that you put on a podcast in the background and then just chill with like a
hmm
satisfying, like really good mechanics that you just chill on your grind. You're not really paying 100% of your attention on it, and you're like, oh, this leveling is so slow. This and that. Like no,
yeah,
it's just you're talking to friends. You're shooting the shit. Like it doesn't. It's not. It's a chill out game.
yeah,
I wish there were more content in it, but that will come over time. So yeah, know what you're getting into. Hopefully, you're seeing some of that stuff in the background now. Not a massive thing. It's just a neat little game, solid combat. Just put on some music and put on a podcast or like chat to a friend on Discord, and you'll have a
yeah.
good time.
Yeah, definitely. That is Space Punks for you. My name is Dorrani, and that has been Sherif. Take care, everyone, and see you later.
So yeah.